A 10-member expert advisory panel on land reform is having its second colloquium at St. George's Hotel in Centurion. The colloquium presents debates and suggests ideas on how to deliver an effective, productive and just land reform policy. It's facing a deadline of the 15th of March. Some of the issues raised includes who are the rightful owners of land, economic use of land once it's in the hands of claimants, and claimants opting for cash over land. To discuss more on this, I'm joined by the advisory panel on land reform's chairperson, Dr. Vuyo Mahlati. Good evening, Dr. Mahlati. Thank you very much for your time. Just going through the speech of the minister in the presidency, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma. Government is impressed, apparently, that in 2 short months, the panel, you are now in a position to detail the nature to be assumed by our land and agrarian reform.
Yes, thanks so much, Vuyo. I think, in a sense, we're humbled by that, because at the end of the day, it's what the report looks like. So the steps going towards that are basically just assisting us with the outcome. But what pleases us is basically the appreciation of an attempt to try and be as consultative as possible, ensuring that we are listening and accommodating different views, because this is such a complex topic addressing so many issues at different levels at the same time.
Where from the conversations that you've been having are the key areas of disagreement, or what are the problematic areas?
Well, I mean, it's obviously, you know, today we were deepening the discussions, looking specifically in terms of land and justice, where Judge Jody Colloquium was assisting us, and also we looked at the whole issue of the dominance of the judiciary, of the courts particularly, and the whole issue of looking at other mechanisms of ensuring that we're clear in policy, at the same time we're coming up with mandatory mediation. On the other hand, was pushing the area of expropriation. We were looking at examples of, you know, where expropriation, for instance, the Land Claims Commissioner was presenting in terms of how they've dealt with that, and gave examples where they actually dealt with expropriation of land. The concern actually immediately is the fact that the current Land Restitution Act still refers to the Expropriation Act of 1975, which basically, in a sense, is part of compounding the issues from a mechanism in the way it deals with it, and even goes further to give more money afterwards as a sweetener to the person the land is being expropriated from after payment. So it was good to have such cases, because as we craft the operationalization of the just and fair in terms of very specific proposals, we begin to look at where the actual problems are and how this kind of approach can just not be sustainable. And tomorrow we're taking it further to look at new proposals of shifting away from the Land Claims Commission, court, to a land court that begins to address comprehensively some of the things we're talking about. So we're getting into specifics. There are areas of discomfort or different views, and for instance, one of those is the issue of the size of properties and farms in particular. So, you know, is it the level of, are we pushing the approach of small-scale farming, others pushing for bigger commercial farms? But the view generally is, you know, there's no either-or. It's a situation of we've got subsistence farmers, we've got small-scale farmers, we've got medium-sized to commercial. So in a sense, land reform has to accommodate all those. But in the discussions and the instruments, you know, there tends to be that push from one end to the other, and we're allowing that. We are allowing that because we want to listen, we want to hear, you know, the views very specifically in terms of what the push are. But what I like also is that it's becoming clearer where the gaps are from a legislative perspective, but also from an institutional failure perspective as well. So we're becoming clearer in terms of what proposals from an institutional perspective should be, and also the lessons that were shared in terms of what people felt was, you know, the problem with the system, including land administration, which is another area that we are emphasizing as a big area that needs a total overhaul.
One of the things that struck me just going through the minister's speech is that she was saying, and I quote, "It is clear that the market-based land reform initiative, as dictated by the willing seller, willing buyer formula, will therefore not assist in addressing the inequality legacy of apartheid, with serious implications for agrarian reform and urban development." And then she goes on to say, although the latter is not in the purview of your panel, the panel ought to maintain it in its line of sight. Is it something that you are looking into as well, or something you have a finger on?
Absolutely, and it's one area that we sort of are having consensus around, because we are seeing the problems around willing buyer, willing seller. And in a sense, I mean, from the previous conversations and colloquia and roundtables that we've had, that is the position. So our proposal is to shift from the willing buyer, willing seller, and focus attention on a more focused and targeted, integrated approach for land acquisition and allocation. And that includes both public land and private land.
Very quickly, Dr. Mahlati, will you be able to meet the 15th of March deadline from the way things are progressing?
And, you know, we don't want stress around that, okay, guys? Because the 15th of March is when we submit it internally to the IMC. And they look at that, they give us feedback, and only after that do we submit the final report to the President. So, in a sense, on the 15th of March, this is where we give our final draft to the IMC, and after that we need to be given time. So come back to us mid-April to ask what's happening.
Thank you very much for your time this evening. That was the advisory panel on land reforms chairperson, Dr. Vuyo Mahlati. Let's bring